I want the truth. I want to know about the men. I want to know where all the money went.
What men, Daniel? What are you even talking about?
Don't act innocent. Ifeoma told me everything.
Ifeoma told you. Daniel, your sister has been stealing from us for 3 years. Then look at your daughter. Look at how thin she is. If I had everything you sent, would she look like this?
I don't know.
Is everything all right in here? I heard shouting.
Ifeoma smiled at her brother the way she'd smiled at him for 3 straight years, the smile of a woman who had never once been caught. She didn't know it yet, but the next 10 minutes were about to end that streak forever. That's where the story really begins. Not at the wedding, not at the airport. Right here in a locked bedroom in Lagos, with a husband who believed the wrong sister, a wife who had run out of ways to defend herself, and the truth about to come out that not one person in that house was ready for stay to the end, because when it finally breaks, it doesn't come from where anyone expects. This is the story of Daniel and Chiamaka Fagbade, and it starts 3 years earlier under a mango tree with 2 people who had no idea what family was going to cost them. Daniel Fagbade grew up in a modest compound in Ibadan, where the zinc roof leaked every rainy season and electricity was something you hoped for, not something you counted on. He didn't have much. What he had was conviction, a stubborn belief that if you worked hard enough for long enough, poverty would eventually let go of you. He met Chiamaka at the University of Ibadan. It wasn't love at first sight. It was slower than that, the kind of thing that builds one season at a time. She was sitting under a mango tree near the Faculty of Arts, notebook open, forehead creased in concentration. Daniel had walked past that tree 100 times. That day, something made him stop. "You look like you're trying to solve the problems of the entire nation," he said. She looked up, startled, then smiled. Just trying to understand Shakespeare. Apparently, even dead Englishmen had better love lives than the rest of us. That was the beginning. Conversations under that tree, shared plates of beans and plantain, long walks while the sky turned orange and then purple, 2 people talking about a future that felt both far away and somehow within reach if they kept walking toward it together. Chiamaka saw something in Daniel other people missed. Not just ambition, but a gentleness underneath it, one he tried to hide because he thought softness and survival couldn't coexist. She proved him wrong, slowly, without ever saying so directly. They married 3 years after graduation, a small ceremony, plastic chairs, jollof rice in pots big enough to feed the whole compound. Daniel's older sister, Ifeoma, was there too, in a bright blue jail that felt a little too festive for the sharp calculation behind her eyes. She smiled through the whole thing. She hugged Chiamaka and called her sister in front of everyone. But Chiamaka would remember, years later, that the smile never once reached Ifeoma's eyes. The early marriage was the kind of poverty that teaches you exactly what matters. Nights without dinner. Mornings with a landlord's fist against the door. Chiamaka sold Zari by the roadside, tutored neighborhood children for whatever small amount their parents could spare, and somehow still found a way to smile when Daniel came home each evening, worn down by another job that demanded 12 hours and paid for 8. "How was today?" he'd ask. "We survived it," she'd say. "That's a good day." When their daughter Amara was born, the whole compound came out to celebrate. She arrived with her father's serious eyes and her mother's gentle spirit. Holding her for the first time, Daniel made a silent promise. "You will never know the hunger I knew. You will have a better life than this one." A beautiful promise, and as Daniel would learn, one of the easiest in the world to make, and one of the hardest to keep without losing something else along the way. It was an ordinary Saturday when the promise started to become something else. Daniel had come to Lagos for another job interview. Another long shot. Walking through a mall in Ikeja, lost in mental arithmetic on bills he couldn't pay, a voice called out behind him. Daniel Fagbad, is that really you?" He turned to find a man in an expensive suit, sunglasses pushed into his hair, a gold watch catching the light. It took him a moment to place the face. James. They'd been inseparable as children. Same primary school, same streets, same impossible dreams. Secondary school had scattered them, and Daniel had lost track of him entirely. Over coffee that cost more than Daniel usually spent on food in a day, James told him everything. Years of construction work in France, saved franc by franc, until he'd built a contracting business of his own in Lyon, employing other Nigerians, creating opportunity where there hadn't been any. You should come, James said, leaning in. I need people I can trust. The pay is real. This could change your family's whole life. I have a wife, Daniel said. A daughter. A baby girl. James waved a hand as if the detail were minor. Bring them later. Go first, get established, save real money, then bring them into a life that's already built. Trust me, this is how it's done. That night in the small room he shared with Chiamaka and baby Amara, Daniel laid it out. Chiamaka listened. Their daughter asleep in her arms. How long? She asked. A year, Daniel said, though even he wasn't sure he believed it. Maybe 2. Just long enough to bring you both over properly. She looked at their sleeping daughter, then back at her husband, at the hope in his eyes, this desperation of a man who'd watched opportunity slip through his fingers for years. How do you say no to hope? We'll be waiting, she said. One question remained. Who would receive the money and packages while Daniel was gone? Daniel's older sister Ifeoma lived in Lagos, close enough to help. She was family, and to Daniel, family meant something sacred. Ifeoma will take care of everything, he told Chiamaka. She's my sister. She loves us. Chiamaka nodded, though something in her whispered a warning she couldn't quite name. The memory of a smile that never reached its owner's eyes. Daniel trusted his sister completely. That would have to be enough. It wasn't. At the airport, Chiamaka watched Daniel disappear through the departure gate, baby Amara strapped to her back. She didn't cry there. She saved her tears for the nights Amara woke crying, and there was no one to share the weight of it. The first months were bearable. Daniel called often, describing the cold, the long walks to the construction sites, the strange food. Money came through Ifeoma, though Chiamaka noticed it was always less than what Daniel said he'd sent transfer fees. Ifeoma explained smoothly. Bank charges. It adds up. Your husband doesn't understand how these things work over there. Then the packages started arriving incomplete. Daniel would call, excited, describing clothes he'd sent, a new phone, tiny shoes for Amara that had cost him a full day's wages. When Chiamaka collected the packages from Ifeoma's house, the bags were always lighter than they should have been. The phone never appeared. Some clothes were missing. And those tiny shoes, Chiamaka found them one afternoon on the feet of Ifeoma's own daughter. Oh, those, Ifeoma said, unbothered. Daniel sent extras, said I should take some for my kids too. We're family after all. Surely Daniel had authorized it. Surely she'd misunderstood. She would spend the next 3 years learning exactly how wrong that assumption was. A year passed. Daniel's calls thinned, not because he called less, but because the old phone Ifeoma handed down kept dying mid-conversation. The smartphone Daniel had actually sent stayed in Ifeoma's own pocket. Too much phone for someone who might not know how to use it, she said when Chiamaka finally asked. The money that reached Chiamaka was just enough to survive on, and barely that. She and Amara ate once a day, sometimes twice. Amara grew thin, her eyes too large for her small face. Where is your husband? Neighbors would ask. Why does he leave you to suffer like this? Chiamaka had no answer. She wrote real letters to Daniels, explaining the money wasn't enough, that Amara was sick, and there was no medicine. She left them with Ifeoma to post. They never reached France. Instead, Ifeoma wrote her own brother, I don't know how to tell you this, but Chiamaka has been seen with other men. The money you send disappears so fast. I think she spends it on herself while your daughter goes without. Daniel read those letters alone in Lyon, handshaking with anger and hurt. Why would his own sister lie? They were blood, and so the letters did exactly what Ifeoma intended, turning an ordinary, understandable anxiety into something that felt, from thousands of miles away, like certainty. Who was that man seen leaving the house? He demanded once. What man, Daniel? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Ifeoma told me everything. Ifeoma told you what? He'd already hung up. Chiamaka moved back into her family's compound, unable to keep up the rent alone. Relatives whispered. Some blamed her. Others pitied her. Amara, 3 now, kept asking when Papa was coming home. Soon, Chiamaka told her, though soon never came. Meanwhile, Ifeoma thrived. Her children wore the clothes meant for Amara. They played with toys bought for their cousin. Her friends admired her generous brother in France, and she accepted the compliments with a modest smile, never mentioning where the generosity had actually been intended to land. Family is everything, she'd say whenever anyone asked. 3 long years. And then Daniel called with news that should have felt like an answered prayer. I'm coming home, he said, his voice tight. I've saved enough. I'm bringing you and Amara to France. For good, Chiamaka should have felt relief. Instead, dread settled into her stomach like a stone. Something in his voice told her this wasn't the reunion she'd imagined for 3 years. When? 2 weeks. I'll call Ifeoma with the details, of course. Always Ifeoma. When Ifeoma called to share the news herself, her voice carried a cheerful edge that felt almost mocking. My brother is finally coming home. I hope you're ready to answer for how you've treated his trust. What are you talking about? Chiamaka asked. The line went dead. On the morning Daniel arrived, Chiamaka dressed Amara in the one good outfit they had left, a dress that had once been bright yellow, now faded thin. We're going to see Papa today, she said. Really? Amara's face lit up, and it broke her mother's heart, because the little girl barely remembered him. More myth than memory, they met at Ifeoma's house, chosen as neutral ground. When Daniel walked in, Chiamaka's breath caught. He looked older, harder, more polished. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Daniel, she said softly, stepping forward. He looked at her, said nothing for a long moment. Then, hello, Chiamaka. Just hello, the greeting you give a stranger, not a wife. Ifeoma bustled around the room playing hostess while her children showed off toys and clothes Chiamaka recognized instantly, gifts that had never reached her daughter. Amara clung to her mother's wrapper, unsure of the stern man everyone called her father. Finally, Daniel spoke, formal cold. I need to speak to Chiamaka privately. Ifeoma's eyes gleamed. Of course, brother. Use my room. I want the truth, Daniel said without preamble. About the men. About where the money went. About why my daughter looks half-starved while you, he gestured vaguely, do whatever it is you've been doing. What men, Daniel? What are you talking about? Don't act innocent. Ifeoma told me everything. Ifeoma told you. Chiamaka repeated the words slowly, and something clicked into place. The missing packages, the shrinking money, 3 years of it. Your sister has been stealing from us. Everything you sent. We've been starving, Daniel, while she... Stop. I won't hear you badmouth my sister. She's the only one who's been honest with me. Then look at your daughter, Chiamaka said. Look at how thin she is. If I was getting everything you sent, would she look like this? For the first time, Daniel really looked at Amara. Too thin, clothes worn through, eyes too old for 3 years old. Something cracked in his certainty. The door burst open. Ifeoma, everything all right? I heard shouting. We're fine, Chiamaka said, meeting her eyes directly. We were just discussing how your niece has been starving while her father sent more than enough. How dare you, Ifeoma snapped. Daniel, are you hearing this? She's trying to poison you against your own blood. Then explain this. Chiamaka pulled the cracked phone from her bag. Where's the smartphone Daniel sent? And the clothes I've seen on your children. How much of what he actually sent ever reached me? I don't owe you an explanation, then explain it to him. The argument spilled into the living room, where extended family had gathered, leaning in, sensing drama before it fully arrived. An older aunt spoke first. Ifeoma, those shoes your daughter is wearing, didn't Daniel send photos of shoes just like those, meant for his own daughter? Ifeoma's face went pale. He sent more than one pair, and that phone, another relative added, pointing. Isn't that the model Daniel said he sent for his wife? One by one, the small things people had noticed and quietly dismissed for 3 years came out into the open. Ifeoma's sudden prosperity, her children's new things, all of it arriving exactly while Chiamaka and Amara had quietly suffered. Ifeoma, Daniel said quietly now, dangerously quiet. Tell me the truth. She's lying. She's trying to steal what's rightfully. Ifeoma stopped herself too late. What's rightfully what? Silence. Every eye on her. And something in her simply gave up pretending. You have no idea how hard it's been, she said, voice sharpening into something bitter. You send money like it cost you nothing. I have children too. Why should she get everything while I do all the work? The work of stealing from your own niece? Daniel's voice had gone cold. The work of destroying my marriage with lies. Your marriage was already weak. If it was strong, a few letters wouldn't have broken it. And you believed me easily enough, didn't you? You wanted to believe the worst. It landed hard because it was true. Distance and fear had made him susceptible, and Ifeoma had known exactly how to use it. Daniel turned to Chiamaka, tears on her face, her back still straight. I'm sorry, he said, hearing how small the words sounded. She didn't answer right away. Sorry didn't feed a hungry child. Sorry didn't undo 3 years. He knelt to Amara's level instead. Hello, I'm your papa. I know you don't remember me, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for not being here. Amara looked at him, then up at her mother, as if asking permission. Kiamaka nodded through her tears, and slowly Amara let her father hold her. She didn't hug him back, not yet. Trust once broken has to be earned again, even by a 3-year-old. That night, away from Ifeoma's house, they talked for hours while Amara slept between them. Kiamaka laid out the hunger, the loneliness, the confusion. Daniel confessed his doubt, his shame at believing a lie over his own wife. I don't know if I can forgive this, Kiamaka said honestly. Not the stealing, that was her. But you stopped trusting me. How do I forgive that? I don't know if you should, Daniel admitted, but I'm asking for the chance to try. She looked at their sleeping daughter's hand curled around her own finger. For her, she finally said, I'll try for her, but if you ever choose someone else's lies over my truth again, we're done. Understand, I understand. The days that followed were hard. Daniel cut all ties with Ifeoma. She tried to apologize, tried to invoke family loyalty. Some betrayals go too deep for that. You didn't just steal money, Daniel told her in their last conversation. You stole 3 years of my daughter's life. That's not what family does. That's what enemies do. She left in tears. Daniel felt no satisfaction, only a tired, heavy sadness at what his own blood had chosen to do. Before flying to France, Chiamaka wanted to visit their old neighborhood one last time, to thank the people who had shared food and kindness when the rest of the world hadn't. An old woman who had fed Amara more times than she could count pulled Chiamaka aside. You survived something that would have broken many women, she said. You didn't become bitter. Remember that strength. You'll need it wherever you go. Thank you, Chiamaka whispered, for reminding me that not all family is blood, and not all blood is family. The old woman smiled. A single tree doesn't make a forest. You survived because you had one around you, even after the tree you leaned on turned out to be hollow inside. On their last night in Lagos, standing on a hotel balcony over the lit-up city, Chiamaka asked, Do you think we'll be okay? I don't know, Daniel said honestly. I think we'll have good days and bad ones, but I hope eventually we'll be okay. It's strange, Chiamaka said. I always thought the worst thing would be hunger or poverty. It wasn't. The worst thing was losing faith in family. Daniel took her hand. She let him hold it, tentatively. I chose my sister's lies over your truth, he said. I can spend the rest of my life apologizing and it still won't be enough. But I can spend the rest of my life showing you I've learned what real betrayal looks like, and that it wore the face of family. It wasn't a happy ending. Not yet, maybe not ever fully. But it was a beginning. Years later, when Amara was old enough to ask, Chiamaka told her the truth, not soften the real one. Why did Auntie Ifeoma do it? Because greed can poison even family, Chiamaka would answer. Because jealousy can turn love into something else. Because sometimes the people meant to protect you are the ones who hurt you most. And because what happens in the dark always finds its way into the light. Did you forgive Papa? I forgave him for being human, for being afraid, for making a mistake. But forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to keep going while carrying what you learned. Your father earned my trust back slowly, through what he did, not what he said. That's all any of us can do after we fail someone we love. They built a life in Lyon, modest, imperfect, honest. In their living room hung a photograph from the hardest years, Chiamaka, thin and tired, holding a serious-faced Amara. Daniel had insisted on keeping it up, so we never forget, he said. So Amara knows what her mother survived, so I never forget what my doubt cost us. Ifeoma tried to reach them over the years, letters unanswered, calls unreturned. Eventually she stopped trying. Some bridges once burned don't get rebuilt, there's an old saying. It's the stone from inside the house that breaks the pot. The deepest betrayals rarely come from strangers. They come from the people already standing closest to you, the ones who never had to break in because they already held the key. Ifeoma was that stone. She had the access, she had the trust, and she used all of it deliberately to destroy. But there's a second saying too. A cracked calabash can still hold water if you're careful with it. Daniel and Chiamaka's marriage was that cracked calabash, damaged but not destroyed. Still able to hold love again, as long as both of them stayed careful, stayed honest, and never forgot what carelessness had already cost them once. This isn't a story with a clean hero and an obvious villain. It's a story about a woman who refused to let suffering define her, a man who learned at enormous cost what misplaced trust does to the people who depend on you, and a child who grew up understanding that family isn't a matter of blood. It's a matter of who actually shows up, not a perfect story, but a true one. And in the end, truth matters more than perfection ever could. If this story moved you, you know exactly what to do, and I'll see you in the next one.